Welcome to Kitchen Table Conversations, a series of short and shareable conversation starters for those of us who have or love and support people with a complicated and beautiful brain. Here's your host, Angela Geddes.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Kitchen Table Conversations. I'm your host, Angela, and thanks so much for tuning in today. I am having a particularly hard time believing that we are now in the middle of August. I hope that for many of you, you are taking some time to enjoy the warmer weather and sort of the relaxed atmosphere that often comes with summer holidays. But I'm also really mindful of those individuals and families that kind of struggle with the lack of routine and the structure and the more consistent supervision that some of our kids and youth and maybe young adults require. So my thoughts are with all of you, and I hope that you are able to find some peace and calm and comfort during these days, and then also take some time to look forward to September and all the opportunities that a new school year comes with. So I wanted to take a little bit of time today to talk about our use of technology and some of the things that I continue to learn around that topic area. And I subscribe to Psychology Today, and I'm often really inspired by the articles within. And one of them that I read recently is talking about how our brains learn best. And I don't think it'll come to much of a surprise to many that the use of technology has sort of been such a big part of our lives over the last 20 years, particularly, but more and more so, I would say. And I learned that Sweden is taking a really hard look at the use of technology and really sort of challenging the general perception and understanding that technology is helping us all learn and helping us to do better and making things easier for us. And so there's no doubt that technology does come with its perks, and it can be incredibly helpful. But Dr. Jared Cooney-Horvath kind of presents a pretty compelling argument that effective learning is deeply tied to human connection, really spending time focusing in on what it is we're doing and really trying to find purpose and meaning in the knowledge and internalizing that. And that's where technology, and especially artificial intelligence, kind of falls short. So as parents and caregivers, it's important to kind of consider these findings and manage technology use in possibly different ways at home. Some of the key points of this article in particular talked about empathy and how that's foundational in learning. And that's why we saw during COVID, when we were spending a lot of time learning in front of a computer, that some of the concepts weren't kind of sinking in. We're learning now that, when there's a relationship with the teacher, when the teacher is able to engage with the students and help them to buy into the purpose of the lessons, that human connection is really crucial for some of that brain synchronization, which significantly increases learning. So, as parents and caregivers, we can recognize that kind of empathy and explaining, again, what it is we are trying to learn and bringing that to real life, that can really help with the foundational learning concepts. This article also really points out our intrinsic need for deeper knowledge and really, like I said before, understanding why we're learning. And creativity and critical thinking are not just about accessing information and finding out where to get it, but it's about deeply understanding and internalizing. And that helps with memory, that helps with making sense of things. And the author here challenges the idea that artificial intelligence and Google searches can sometimes replace the need for memorization by offering easy access to information, but that the true learning requires embedded knowledge and step-by-step building of those kinds of concepts. And that's what brings it into long-term memory. And that's something that technology certainly just cannot do for us. So encouraging children to really engage deeply in their studies rather than relying on quick Google searches and answers from the internet, because that just it's kind of in and out. And it doesn't help with that long-term cognitive development. And then we're also talking about the dangers of multitasking and importance and the real importance of focusing and staying on task. And we're seeing, I saw that with my own children. I can remember with my oldest in particular, when he was working on his homework, it just seemed to take him longer than what was necessary. And when I went downstairs and looked at the computer at one point, there was just the taskbar was full of other things that took his attention away from the task on hand. And, attention acts as a filter that determines what information is processed and retained. And every time we change the channel, so to speak, we have to kind of pause and connect with the rules that are associated with each of the tasks at hand. And that takes extra time and it takes extra focus, and it kind of muddies the water a little bit. So, Horvath warns against the negative impact of multitasking. And this is very common when children use technology. So common that on average, when kids are working or students are working on an assignment, there are 6 minutes of focus on task before moving on to another Google search, another web page investigation, another message or social media interaction. And for every 38 minutes, or for every hour, 38 minutes of that hour is spent off task. So that's like I said, it was no wonder that assignments took my children longer than what they could have had they just spent, half an hour focused on what it was they were supposed to be doing. So I think many of us as parents and caregivers can relate to that. And again, as a social worker, I see that, there are addictive traits that come along with technology use, and things like that really need to be considered. This article also helps us to remember the importance of kind of that physical context in terms of memory development, and that it's really vital for retention. The author explains that printed materials are quite superior to digital formats because they provide that consistent sort of spatial layout, which aids in memory formation. So you can recall where things were on a page, and that helps you to link to the concepts that you're reading about and how you can link them to further understanding as the book, as the reading continues. And this is really an important consideration for parents who may opt for more print-based learning tools and help their children to retain information in better ways. So again, I can remember, going to restaurants and bringing books to read or coloring books or activity books to participate in. And now we're seeing a lot of screens and kids bouncing from one activity to another. And although that's really entertaining, I'm not sure if it's really helping kids to the degree of which we think it might be. And many of these activities that we see that are digitally based are meant to be learning tools. But what we're learning now is that bouncing around from one thing to another does not help us with our memory and our executive functioning and our ability to concentrate and focus and complete tasks as we might have thought it would. So again, Sweden's educational experience, they refer to the last 20 years as a bit of an experiment, recently recognizing some of the drawbacks to the overuse of technology. So Swedish schools have now been scaling back on digital tools in favor of more traditional learning methods. And this shift has been driven by the understanding that technology alone cannot foster the deep learning and personal connections that are so important for educational success. So, and they give examples of that kind of speak to this point in that, without connection, there's not purpose, there's going to be a lack of motivation to complete tasks. And so they give examples of 85% of tuition-free, so no cost, online learning modules or courses end up not completed. And even for people who pay for the tuition or pay a tuition for an online course, only 50% of them actually get completed. So there are definitely some limitations to tech-driven education. So for those of us who are parents and caregivers and helpers, some of these insights can suggest that we kind of need to rethink. And I think many of us do know that in our guts, that, we are overusing. I hear parents all the time, and there's a lot of sort of guilt and confusion around that. And I do believe that, like everything, there's a cost and a benefit to the use of technology. And sometimes technology and the use of screens can be, a game changer and a real source of peace within some homes where, video games, for example, I think they do get a bit of a bad rap. I mean, sometimes that's where kids really, really shine, and they really appreciate the time to be able to interact online with others. And for some, that's the best their social experiences get. So I'm not here to judge harshly. I never am, but I'm here to provide some information and some important conversations to go back to your kitchen table, just so that you can kind of rethink, is this getting me where I want to go, or is this causing more harm than some of the good that we were expecting? So, I mean, very simply, of course, when you give a 2-year-old a cell phone, or an iPad at a kitchen table, they're going to be quieter. But at what cost? So for more information about how our brain learns best, I encourage you to check out my website for a link to this article and a couple of other resources. And once again, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you're able to bring this conversation back home to your kitchen tables for further discussion and debate. With many thanks, Angela.